Hi. So, I am Jake Miller, and today we're going to be talking about social justice in Wisconsin Rapids Public Schools. Um, I am coming from Meade Elementary, so I'm going to have more of an emphasis from the elementary perspective. But I want to quick talk about our content today. We are talking about some very difficult topics. But we will start out with who I am, because I think it's a great way to start in sharing about who I am with all that we're about to talk about. We're going to look at some important data that affects our schools. Thinking about becoming an ally. This is really getting into the basis of this talk about being socially and bringing social justice to our schools. We're going to talk about implicit biases. We're going to dive deep into what those look like and recognizing them within ourselves. We're also going to be addressing microaggressions and the specifics of microaggressions between students and staff and what those might look like in some examples and more vocabulary there as well. And we're really going to wrap up with belonging, how we want all students and staff to feel a sense of belonging in our schools by looking at our mission and vision and connecting that to this whole talk. At the end, we're really going to take a moment to reflect, have an exit ticket, and talk about how we can continue this conversation going forward. So this is going to be everything that we're talking about. Again, this is some heavy stuff. So starting out with who I am. So I wanted to start out with this because some of you might not know exactly who I am. You might know me, but I am principal of Meade School. I have taught in 5th grade as a 5th grade teacher, primarily math, and I am currently engaged. I'm from Park Falls, Wisconsin, so northern Wisconsin, and I live in Wisconsin Rapids now, and I am a veteran of the Wisconsin Army National Guard. So I wanted to start with who I am because I think we all have a story. It's very important that we realize that we each have a story, we each have a background, and all of our students do as well. So I wanted to start here and let you know who I am, where I come from, with a few things, and just start there because it's very important for us to realize that we each have a story, and so do our students. So this is a big topic, like I've mentioned before. This is some things are a little bit scary, some things are a little bit uncomfortable. We're going to talk about that. But this is something that I've shared with students in the past. I have had a couple of students that are Hmong, and this is about 3 years ago, approached me and said, why don't we ever celebrate Hmong New Year at school? So I got to thinking about that, and I consulted some staff who are also Hmong, and we talked about having a Hmong New Year celebration in 5th grade. And this is something I shared beforehand because I really wanted to share that I'm not an expert. I might make a mistake, and we're doing this to learn. And I want to read this underlined line right here in the middle. No students or staff should feel like they need to speak and explain everything about their culture and perspective. I underline that because I wanted to make sure and emphasize that students they should not be put on the spot. They should not have to talk about their whole culture and their whole people if they don't want to. And I feel that same way today. So I included this in here because I think it is a very important place for us to start with our talk today. So think about this as we go through. Feel free to share or not share as much as you wish as we go through these topics. So, feeling uncomfortable. Some of the topics that we discussed today may upset you. You may feel overwhelmed. You may question these topics. You may question yourself. You may question your upbringing, your values. I really want you to know that that's okay, that you are safe here, and no one is trying to single you out or make you feel that you are doing wrong. There's no guilt here. Those emotions might come up, but this is not meant to make you feel guilty or that you owe somebody something. This is for us to learn, and we don't learn and change unless we become uncomfortable. And I'm sure many of us have said that to our students from time to time. So feeling uncomfortable, this might happen in our talk today. And I really want, before I go off this slide, really remember this. Today, try to focus on just one thing, one takeaway that you could start on. You don't need to try and fix or change everything after this talk. Try to take at least one thing away, because there's always more work to be done. I wanted to start off with some data to think about, because this is data from the entire Wisconsin Rapids school system, and this is about expulsions and suspensions. And this data is a little old. It's from 2022, 2023. But this is talking about expulsions and out-of-school suspensions. And it says 5.8% of students experienced disciplinary removals, and certain subgroups had higher percentages. Black, 21%, American Indian, 20%, and Hispanic, 6.5%, and students with disabilities, 12.7%. I wanted to start with this data because, by asking this question, why is this? Why are we seeing this in our schools? Why do certain groups get more discipline, more expulsions, more suspensions than other groups? So I wanted to start with this because all these topics that we're about to talk about connect to this, I believe. So why is this happening? So just think about that for yourself. I think this is a useful way to start, and keep this in your head as we go through these topics. So let's begin with talking about becoming a stronger ally for our students, okay? Becoming an ally is very important, and I know a lot of teachers really want to be that ally for their students. This is much easier said than done. Many of us want to help students, want to make them feel included, but a lot of teachers ask how. How do I do it? I can't relate. I have all this work to do. How can I make sure everybody is feeling included? And I really want to address that students are coming in with some oppression, with this weight on their shoulders that they carry with them every single day. And allies need to be there to support them with that oppression. And as teachers, we can be those allies. We need to support them, be along their side, and understand as best we can. And the way we do this is simply with conversations, which I know many of us are already doing, and being really vulnerable. It takes a lot to be vulnerable with these conversations, but it's very important that we do. We really need to listen more than we share. Listen more than we talk to students. And as teachers and as a principal, I know that I'm one that talks a lot. I'm a talker. But one thing that I really want to work on for myself is that I need to listen more than I talk. Listen more than I talk. And in that listening, in those conversations we might have, by being an ally for our students, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to mess up. The important thing here is that we own those mistakes, is that we apologize for them correctly, heartfeltly. We've all heard students say that, "I'm sorry," and they think that's enough. We don't want to be like that, so we want to make sure that we give a heartfelt apology if we do make mistakes. I can think back to a couple times thinking about going back to the Hmong New Year, the mistakes I made there when I was working with them and planning that, and making sure I got the language correct, because I don't speak Hmong. Making sure that I wrote things out correctly in the Hmong language. I made some mistakes there, and I had to own those. And it was really a learning experience for me to go through that. So a little bit more about owning your mistakes. So all this work, all these topics, takes a lot of time, okay? We really need to be conscious of ourselves, conscious of our biases that we have, that we carry with us. And to do that, to be conscious, you need to do the inner and outer work. The inner work is that work where we reflect. We might journal, might think about situations that have come up. Or we might think about our biases. It's really done alone with just you. That outer work is being that ally, being there for our students, standing up for them, listening to them, and having those important conversations. So the inner and outer work is very important. And I really think, though, that most of this work that we're talking about is inner. It starts with us first, and then it makes us be better allies to help students and do that outer work and be there for them. Recognizing our privilege is sometimes very hard in the moment, because as teachers and as a principal, we have a million things going on throughout the day, and it's very hard for us to stop and think in those situations when those big behaviors are happening, when those big moments are happening. But we need to realize that we have a privilege there. We have a big privilege. And by recognizing that, we can stand up for the oppressed. I have a story about something that happened to me outside of the classroom. I used to be an Uber and Lyft driver, and I just saw a lady one day that I thought, I need to offer her a ride. She looks like she's waiting for a ride. So I offered her one, and I drove her like 3 blocks in my truck, and that was fine. I was telling that story to my friend, and she said, I would never ever do that. I'm like, oh, well, that's just how I was raised. That's just what I believe. But she said, I would never feel safe doing that. I didn't realize my privilege there. I was a man in a truck, and I felt safe enough to offer a ride to someone. So that's an outside of the classroom story. But I think those stories happen all the time in our classrooms, where we think we feel safe and where we don't. So we need to really think about those things. I have a few do nots here in this category for the mistakes. When we're having these conversations and being that ally for our students, we should not expect things, take credit, or assume things. We're trying to get away from our assumptions, right? We're trying to get away from our those implicit biases that we have. So we should not expect gratitude and to be called that savior or anything like that when we're doing this work. It's hard for us to sometimes think that everybody wants a thank you or a job well done or something like that. And sometimes when we're doing this work and these moments, those don't come, and that's okay. So now I really want to talk about these implicit biases. So implicit biases really are about those assumptions that we make very quickly, those categorizing of people, of individuals, assuming things from only viewing a few things or what we hear. This is a really big problem that we have in our schools, really big problem that we as teachers, I think we can all relate to, because we all hear this student's family story, what happened last year, all those things. We think about that, and then we put those students into a category. Thinking of families like a story a student might share, my mom's ex-boyfriend lives in the camper in our front yard. I'm thinking, what? Why is that? But this is her normal. This is her family. So we have these students come in, but we need to make sure that we're not putting them in that box when we hear a story like that. We keep those expectations high for them. We keep them equal. And I have 2 questions here, about implicit biases. What students do you think struggle in math? What students do you think struggle in reading? And we really need to dig deep and think about, do I really have that bias? Do I really think that some students do better in math than in reading? We of course want every student to succeed in math and reading. We have good mathematicians and good readers. That's what we really want. But those biases we have might be excluding groups. So we really need to reflect on that. And that's something that I try to do, is reflect on, do I really think that way about this group of students? Do I really think that? So reflection is very important. So thinking about that brings me to microaggressions. And I have micro insults and micro invalidations here. I have 3 definitions here. But I really want to stick with that broad microaggression because I think this is a lot of vocabulary. But microaggression is a common direct or indirect injustice that happens. And below that, we have micro insults and micro invalidations. So a micro insult could be something you say to a student that insults their group that they belong to. It might be not recognizing a holiday for that student, or planning something on a holiday for that student. It's rude. It's not sensitive for them. Micro invalidations could be excluding thoughts, feelings, experiences of people from different groups. Examples there I'm thinking of would be that big emphasis in our curriculum of European explorers and not really validating Native Americans and in our textbooks and in our readings and all of that. So microaggression has micro insults and micro invalidations below it, but really all these are microaggressions that can happen. And these actually, they might not seem like a lot in the moment, but to those students, they leave a harmful psychological impact. So we really just need to become aware of microaggressions and when they might come up for us and how we can address having fewer of them or none of them. So from the student perspective on microaggressions, one big thing, and I'm very guilty of this, would be mispronouncing a student's name repeatedly. A story I have here is that when I was in college, I went to a practicum and I just, I was tossed in, go teach a lesson. So I was doing that and I misspoke. I mispronounced a student's name, Joaquin. And I did it repeatedly. And the teacher had even told me, but throughout it was an hour-long lesson and I did it a couple of times. And I could give you many excuses as to why I didn't make a change or apologize or anything like that. But really, I was not thinking about how that's a microaggression. I wasn't thinking about that at all. I really glossed over it because I didn't think it was a big deal. But it is a big deal. It's a very big deal. And a student's name is very important to them. So something that I do is make sure when I was a teacher, is really look through my names, really look through them, highlight ones that I think I wasn't going to pronounce correctly. And before attendance that first day, maybe even at open house, if I was lucky, if they came, I could come and ask them how to say their name, practice saying their name, write it out how I heard it and say it correctly. So really practice that over and over. And sometimes it takes time, but making sure that you practice it and get it is so important for that student. Significant holidays. I'm thinking about funerals. There are certain groups that funerals may be a long time, maybe a week long, and we need to make sure that we are accommodating students like that. Making sure we give time for specific holidays that aren't off in our calendar, or not assigning big assignments, tests, quizzes on those days. Very important. I wrote lowering expectations for specific students. Sometimes those big behaviors come up or those stories come up and we know about the family history or the family story of a student and we think, well, since they're going through all of that, they don't have to do this. We really, really need to work on keeping those high expectations. And I know most of us are very good at this, but it's very important that we remember that high expectations, all students can reach them. And we need to keep those standards high throughout all of this. Heterosexual relationships. Our LGBTQ plus students could be feeling those microaggressions just because we only talk about girlfriend, boyfriend, or husband and wife. Those words. We really need to make sure that we're using more inclusive language there, like couples or significant others. And talk about gay couples as well. There's really a big emphasis on those heterosexual relationships. And my last note here is assuming students can afford something. I'm thinking about field trips or when students need to come in and pay $10 for something. Some families cannot do that. And even though you may say, well, if you can't afford it, let me know. It's still hard for students in that moment and they feel that shame. So really, that could be a microaggression in and of itself as well. So addressing those might be, it might be hard to address those situations, but these are all microaggressions and there are better ways for us to go about these situations. So student-to-student microaggressions. What are we doing when we hear these? Do we address them appropriately? What specific things have you heard students do or say? Many times students will tattle if they hear the N-word or if they hear any racist joke. But what are we doing in other moments when groups are it offer or when students are having microaggressions against each other. Standing up in those moments is very important, and talking about them is very important. I think a lot of this, another side effect of this is that students even feel that they can't even say the word black. That's racist. Or I've had that with students in the past where, and we had a conversation that is a word that describes a group. And it's not racist to talk about that, but sometimes it becomes everything's racist, and we need to be very careful of that. We need to have those important conversations with our classes and with our school that we need to address the microaggressions and name them and talk about better ways to communicate with each other and have better social skills. I also wanted to put in a note here about staff perspective. So first of all microaggressions that happen to students can happen to staff, obviously. But there's so much that goes on for teachers that we have high curriculum demands. We sometimes political opinions get brought up at school, which can leave people feeling on the outside or that they need to fit in. The mainstream Christian faith. This is a hard one for a lot of people because sharing about our faith or bringing something up like that at work can leave some people feeling out of it. Some people are not Christian. And since Christianity is more mainstream, it's easier for us to go along with that. But some things that come up with that could be microaggressions. So it's very important that we also are mindful of what we're saying and how we're talking to the staff and how we talk to them to avoid microaggressions. So something that I do is I make sure that when I'm talking with someone, with staff, is that I'm keeping it about school and work. However, talking about personal lives is also very important, but you need to be careful not to bring up these microaggressions. I wanted to bring up our mission and vision here. This is what we have at Meade. This is probably very similar to other schools within the district, and I wanted to highlight two things. So we talk about this sense of belonging in our schools. A safe, supportive learning environment. Are we doing all that we can to make sure that we minimize microaggressions in our schools and recognize our implicit biases? And the last note here on the first one, connections between home, school, and community. A lot of families may not feel safe or welcome in our schools, and we need to address those concerns. So, how are we making sure that we connect with families on a more personal level and make sure that they feel that they are welcome at our schools? If we can do that, we know that we'll do a lot better for our students. So, belonging a little bit more. Some big questions here. How are we connecting to both students and families? What are the obstacles to connecting to students and families? Do families feel welcome in our schools? All families. Do all family styles and family types feel welcome in our schools? Do all groups feel welcome in our schools? Attendance has been a big issue at our school. And that sense of belonging is so important that I believe it would bring more students into school and we'd have higher attendance if more families felt connected to our school. Here is what some parents have said before. And some things that we have at Meade are Popsicles on the Playground, Movie Night, and Parent Square. Parent Square is the app that we use to communicate to families everything that's going on in their classroom. But Popsicles on the Playground and Movie Night are some opportunities that we can actually bring families into the school. Here's what some parents have said. And I just want to highlight a few things. The first thing, I feel welcome at Meade School. We actually did get all agree or strongly agree in that category. And this survey was taken after Popsicles on the Play, or as parents arrived at Popsicles on the Playground. So we have a lot of agrees there, but not all families showed up to that. So a survey that went out to everybody equally is very important because then we get everybody's perspective. This is a fun event that most parents come to, but it's not very equitable because some parents may be working. Some parents may not have transportation. These are things that we need to think about. How do we make a survey that's equitable that gets to all families? Then we get more solid data. But I just wanted to highlight that. And this did give us some good information as to what we're doing well and what we can work on at Meade. So, what will I do as your principal? As you know, as principal, above all, I'm here to support you to best support your students, all of our students. I am a talker. One thing I really want to work on is listening, making sure that I'm hearing your stories and understanding and really being engaged so I can hear from you as a teacher and from your students. There are a lot of resources available to us. I'm going to have them linked at the end of this presentation. There's a lot of things that we can do with those resources. We can offer more DEUs. We can do book studies. Those will be very, very important and dive deep into more specific subjects here. I really want to be that strong ally for our team and our committees and making sure that we're strong in those teams and committees, that we are actually, that you have the resources and time that you need to be successful. Some of the things I do right now, and they're very simple, is just reflect by journaling. I know everybody's not a journaler, but I do recommend it because it's really helpful to think about and reflect upon your day and the specifics of your day and how you think things could have gone better or what you saw that you didn't like. And then reading. There are some great books out there that we can learn a lot from. What are some things we can all do? There's a lot of great committees. We have the Equity Committee that is district-wide. There are some great book studies that are offered as DEUs. Journaling, like I said. And then SEED, Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity. It's a great course. There is a year-long option and a 2-day option in the summer. This course dives deep into all the topics that we've been discussing. And it gives you a great opportunity to really think about yourself. It's a lot of inner work. A lot of inner work. Most of all, as you're thinking about these topics and what you think you can do to make a change, give yourself grace and be reflective. This is not a time to be beating yourself up, calling anybody out, or anything like that. This is about learning, getting uncomfortable, but giving yourself the grace that you need to grow. These are the reflection exit ticket questions. The one I really want to highlight is, what is one takeaway you have from this? So really think about one takeaway you can take today that you can bring with you going forward tomorrow. Maybe there's some more. Maybe some of you out there have a few things you want to take away. That's fine. But I know a lot of this is overwhelming. Really try to focus on one thing. And please answer these questions honestly and openly. I will read them. And if there's anything else that you want to talk to me about, let me know there or email me. To sum it all up, you are all doing wonderful work here. You're all doing wonderful, wonderful work for our students. These topics are very difficult. They can be very overwhelming. It's understandable. But there are changes that we can make to be better teachers and better people for our students. A lot of this work starts with us. Recognizing your implicit biases, understanding the do's and don'ts of your implicit biases, thinking about what a microaggression looks like, or examples that you have seen in your classroom or in your daily life, or you've experienced against you. Bringing all that together, there are resources available to you to learn more, and you can always reach out with any questions or comments that you have to dive deeper in any of these topics. There are my resources. If you have anything else, please reach out. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all.